Will the Mythic Tier exclusives ever be coming to retail in the future? Or will eBay be the only way to get them for extremely high prices? What prompted this video was what I and many others originally thought was the removal of homebrew that looked very similar to the Spirit Queen's Torment.
No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
But that's not the full story. On the HeroQuest subreddit, we can see here that somebody converted Spirit Queen's Torment from the physical book into a PDF. Now, the way that he did this was HeroQuest Builder, web browser. He used Simping Tool, Paint, and Photoshop to recreate the quest book exactly as it was, and apparently Hasbro did not take a liking to that. Sorry guys, unfortunately I will no longer be uploading content to this Reddit. I was recently this past week issued DMCA Takedown of my content, which of course they have a right to do. Even though the editing and wording was all done myself, the images are of course not mine, as I am not an artist. And this guy will still be continuing to make homebrew stuff. But the important thing is that this was basically a recreation of Spirit Queen's Torment with a couple little tweaks to make sure that there's spelling errors and a couple other issues fixed. There's actually official PDFs available for all the released quest books, except for the stretch goal ones. There's the base game, Keller's Keep, and Return of the Witch Lord that you could get for free right now. So why would those Mythic Tier stretch goal ones still be hidden? It's either to keep that exclusivity, or because Hasbro might be able to profit on it in the future and they don't want to give people a free alternative first. The reason why this copyright takedown notice is important is because in the past 30 years, Hasbro hasn't taken down any content from Ye Olde Inn because the game was out of print for a while, and they couldn't make money from it. And now, you have this quest from the Mythic Tier that was originally exclusive getting taken down for copyright, meaning that Hasbro may be able to profit from it in the future. However, that's not the only reasons why a copyright takedown notice could occur. It could also be that Hasbro just wants to keep their things exclusive to the Mythic Tier. Another option is that the guest designer who was brought in for that particular quest did not want others distributing his copyrighted material, any more than what his contract was for the Mythic Tier. While copying copyrighted content is not legal either way, copying for personal use would not get you on a company's radar when compared to distributing copyrighted material to others in a very public setting. The second option is what happened here. There was also another post on the HeroQuest subreddit here, hoping Mythic content comes to retail. I wasn't lucky enough to be able to back the pre-order campaign for HeroQuest. Is there any information you're able to give me on whether or not the stretch goals will be available to purchase later down the line? And Zargon responded with, "Once I steal the lore tome from Mentor, I shall know all. Until then, I have no announcements to make." And in the comments of this post too, you can see that somebody else had a similar reply happen. While we do not have any details to share, we encourage you to stay tuned for updates here. But at the same time, somebody else got an email from the Hasbro Pulse team saying that there's no plans to back the Mythic Tier add-ons separately, and that they were only produced for that campaign. So again, this does not make things any clearer for us, unfortunately. In some ways, it means that the Mythic Tier stuff could be going to retail, with Hasbro gauging how many people actually want that, but in other ways, it means that they have no plans for it currently. Another thing to look at is their Q&A from November 2020. When they were asked directly if the stretch goals would be available after the campaign ended.
Well, it's not in the current plan to do anything with the stretch goals after the campaign ends, so if you want them, now is the time to show it.
But two things to keep in mind there is that that was from November 2020, and also, even after that, we did not unlock the dragon or the second gargoyle sculpt, but we still got them in the Mythic Tier. That's 1 point for each side of the argument. The unfortunate truth about Hasbro Pulse is that most of the items do remain exclusives. HeroQuest was one exception by being able to go to retail, but as of yet, as you may know, the stretch goals are not, so that begs the question. Is it going to be following the pattern of other Hasbro Pulse items, or is it going to break the mold and also bring those stretch goals to retail in the future? Then, there's the website language of Pulse exclusives and limited time exclusives. If you take a look at the Mythic Tier unlocks here, it says that they're available when stretch goals are met, but it doesn't specify that they're only going to be available during this campaign. But if you take a look at something like Mentor the Wizard and the Witch Lord miniatures, they're limited time exclusives. And the alternate gender heroes were a Pulse bonus. Sir Ragnar was yet another limited time exclusive. And look at this version of the character miniature will only be available during this campaign. That indicates to me that they may be releasing a Sir Ragnar miniature in the future. And yes, Sir Ragnar was also in the Heroic Tier. Then, there's the Guardian Knight to look at next. What better way to gauge the community's response to a new hero that they weren't re-releasing from the old stuff than the Guardian Knight? Because as I mentioned in a previous video, some people may have bought the Mythic Tier just to get Keller's Keep and Return of the Witch Lord. Then, there's Joe Manganiello's involvement with the Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. He may have been brought on just for the crowdfunding campaign, but it would be such a waste of money if they didn't reuse some of that stuff again. There's also some problems presented with that I'll get to later. Imagine the popularity if they were able to use him for a commercial, or to advertise the game, let's say on a talk show or something. Be able to use his influence to further bring more players into the game system. Then you have to remember that the game went beyond their expectations.
The HasLab campaign started as a small passion project that went far beyond our expectations, so it took us a little bit of time to build a team around it.
As well as one of the distributors saying that HeroQuest had pent-up demand, which is definitely true. Let's take an even deeper analysis now, and see what are some of the obstacles standing in the way if Hasbro happened to try and turn the Mythic Tier into separate retail expansions. The first thing that Hasbro would have to consider is the organization. While the Mythic Tier had an assortment of random things such as 2 extra skeletons, or 2 extra zombies, a druid hero, extra orcs, extra mummies, a different quest book, extra dread sorcerer, if they're going to be packaging this stuff up for retail, they need to stick it in expansions together that would make sense. And so they would have to try and do some sorting, figure out which things could go together, which things can be sold separately, that type of thing. The Guardian Knight is actually a good example for this. For one of the heroes like the Warlock that just stands on its own, they could easily sell that the same as the Guardian Knight as its own little miniature in a little box, or even that and a couple of those extra miniatures. Now, one thing that's working against the Crypt of Perpetual Darkness arriving at retail is that for sure for this quest book, and possibly for the other stretch goal ones, is that they were designed to be played with the Mythic Tier, and not with just the HeroQuest game system and that expansion. In this quest book, you can see that it also uses stair tiles from Keller's Keep. Hasbro would have 2 options if they were to bring that to retail. They would either have to A, include those extra stair tiles, or B, they would have to say, requires HeroQuest game system and Keller's Keep to play. One benefit if Hasbro did take the stretch goal stuff to retail is that the heroes are already in the app. So that means that they wouldn't have to spend any more developing their app to add them, and additionally they would already have all the molds and stuff ready because they had to produce it for the Mythic Tier backers. One thing working in the favor of the Crypt of Perpetual Darkness possibly going to retail is that there's been homebrew dragons in HeroQuest for a long time. It's a no-brainer to add them to the game. You have a dungeon crawling game that was originally based on D&D, and before the crowdfunding campaign happened, there was no official dragon miniature. So I'm sure that many people would buy it just to get that dragon. I know that that certainly influenced my decision towards buying into the Mythic Tier. But the final thing that's working against Hasbro is that they have a large backlog to get through. It took until July to see Frozen Horror that was teased in November. So you pair that with all the other old expansions that they need to re-release, as well as the possibility of there being a different Guardian Knight expansion so it's not a limited time exclusive, and you see that Hasbro has such a big backlog that it could be many years if they even do decide to take this stuff to retail. I really wish that I had something more concrete to tell you about, but I'm not in the loop with Hasbro, I don't know what's going on, and the best that I could do was speculate using these different pieces of evidence. If you want to see more HeroQuest content, click the video on screen now. Thanks for watching, goodbye!